Okay. So thank you very much for joining us tonight. We are really happy to have David Williams of Australia and Stuart French to talk about wikis, everything good, bad, ugly, anything. Before we start, I want to congratulate David on being appointed a member of the Order of Australia for services to the community. So well done. And then what I will do is I will let the three of them just give us a short introduction on wiki, whether it's their experience, how they use it, and what they think about wiki. And then we can open the floor to everybody, so you can join us with the conversation. If you have any question, feel free to ask. If you have a story to share or something that you want to get insights from our expertise, yeah, just ask for that. And so who want to go first? Arthur?
No, David.
Okay, David's first. Okay. David, do you mind going first?
No, that's fine. So thank you for the introduction, Dick. I found out the other day when I was reading through some stuff that I'm a multi-potentialite, or I associate myself with being a multi-potentialite, which is, and I thought I was just confused and easily distracted. But evidently a multi-potentialite is someone who has a huge, broad range of interests and can work in all sorts of spaces, and does it to the point where they learn something and then they go off and do something else. So I'm more comfortable than that. I think that's a really good description. And there's actually quite a large international organization about multi-potentialites and what's the best way to operate. So I sort of found a bit of a home in that. So because as you'll see from my background is that I'm a Boilermaker welder by trade. I spent a fair bit of time in project management in construction, then in defence, and then went into information management, knowledge management at defence, running graduate programs, enterprise architecture, risk, I don't know what else, and then went into something completely different, which was running programs in employment services and standing up a new government agency for the Office of Workplace Services. And if you remember Work Choices, I was the program manager for Work Choices. And I went from that to doing procurement, to consulting, and now I run big IT projects and programs on that. And I'm about to move into a position where I'm looking at complex criminal analytics. So just bizarre what comes out of the place. So I also teach project management at the Australian National University, and I'm just finishing my PhD in sociology of how teams, high-performing teams operate. And also opportunity to thank Stu and Arthur for their encouragement and support on that. So, and as a result, because I am a multi-potentialite, something like a wiki is really good for me because it is just quick, it's agile, I can do stuff, I can organize myself across a whole lot of things really quickly. Arthur.
Yes, Arthur.
I was going to point to Stu, but you know, if I do that, you don't know where his picture is, but it's in that position from there, right? Over to you, Stu.
Okay, Stuart.
So I obviously have a master's degree in KM. My thesis was on wikis and collaborative technologies because I've always been really interested in the interaction between the social side of business and the technical side of business and how they co-evolve. And so this topic is really close to my heart, not just because of my study, because the 10 years of work I did with that afterward to prove the theories and to learn more about it. So it's great to have this as a topic tonight. I'm a little bit like Dave, scarily like Dave. I'm going to look into this multi-potentialite bit. In fact, Dave, you need to read my blog post I put up this morning about avoiding becoming dinosaurs. Because I've constantly explored different parts. So I am a computer technician, radio technician by trade. Don't have an undergraduate degree, just went straight to a master's afterwards, and have worked in small business, large business, startups, private, government, federal government, state government, oil companies, medical, finance, shipping, you name it. I've been all over the place. And that's okay, because as knowledge managers, it's all about the people and this, right? Which is the same in every company. I keep saying to people, as long as the company doesn't have all robots as employees, then I've got a job to do. So how do you get them to move to a new era of collaborative performance? And this hit me young when I wanted to work for NASA, and I wanted to be a big hero at NASA. And I listened to this guy speak from NASA, and he said, there are no heroes at NASA anymore. Every single project is a team effort. Not a single person gets to say, I did that. And I was like, okay, all right, well, that's if all the individual jobs are done, if it's up to us now, then maybe the best way to help the world is to help organizations work better together. And now I'm at CFA trying to do exactly that.
And that just raises one of the challenges that people like you and I have, Stu, is that we're so quick to adapt to things and that we wonder why no one else is behind us. You know, where's everybody else? You know, suddenly you're jumping from one thing and then you're jumping to the next thing and you go, oh, this is really interesting.
So the young digital natives are my friends. They get it. They're the ones that are looking for change and want to get away from the old baby boomers. The baby boomers are retiring like crazy. So we've got a chance. So it's good. Over to you, Arthur.
So that was a segue for, retiring baby boomers getting out of the way, was it?
Definitely not. You're 22 at heart.
Yeah, no, that's right. I think I was a millennial before millennials were existed, but then I thought I was a Gen Y before millennials existed. So, it's kind of funny. Yeah, I completely agree with your experience and David's experience about, we get to where we are because we have so many fingers in so many pies and doing all sorts of things. How does a scientist become a quality manager, become a knowledge manager, become a facilitator of global communities? These things we end up doing what we're doing because of the state of mind that we hold. And I wrote about that. There was a chapter in Becoming Adaptable called moving from mindset to mind flex. I think people like us, and probably most of the people on this call, just by the very nature of being on this call, it's about, you hold so many parallel thoughts and even contradictory thoughts in your mind at the same time, and you're clashing them together to say, well, how does this and this be the same thing? How do we move from black and white to the rainbow? And yet they're all part of the same thing. So I think that, we end up doing what we do because we see the world like that. We don't see the world as problems. We see them as opportunities to be resolved. And, collaboration and virtual collaboration tools are really going to help us. Thanks for sharing that. I'll definitely go and have a look and post it. So we'll, how do we find the ways of engaging people of diverse perspectives, diverse experiences, etc., and bring those together? And a wiki is a good way to capture some of that. But a wiki generating conversations around the content in the wiki is, sort of really where the value is. But if you have the conversation, that's an amazing conversation. Only the people in it can experience it. How do we use these tools like, video recording and wikis and whatever to capture the insights and keep the conversations going? And that's how I ended up using wikis quite a lot. And we used them at Cadbury all those years ago. We migrated from Lotus Notes to wikis. And this is going a long time ago now, late 90s, early 2000s. And then when I went back into education, we used them for collaborative learning and open learning, where everyone could see what everyone was doing. you know, depending on the questions and where the conversations go, I can show you some of that. But one of the things I'm doing right now is I'm running a program called ACE, which is accelerated collaborative experience. And we get people from everywhere, from New Zealand right through to Europe, working in virtual collaborative teams, solving problems for a real client, taking them through a series of steps to deconstruct the project and reconstruct it. And this is all free. You know, we're running this as a pilot. I'm not being paid, and nor is anyone else on the program being paid to do this. The clients of the projects are not paying to have their projects in, but eventually, I think this type of learning will become a lot more normal than it is now. But it's really interesting, and of course, it's all done in a wiki, which I can kind of give you a bit of a look at that. It's halfway through the pilot at the moment, so collaborative working to create social value, and wikis has been a big part of that all the way through. Anyway, back to whatever's next, Dick.
Okay, now we can open the floor to everybody. So if you have a questions or you want to share something, feel free to like jump in or raise your hands. And do we have any questions first? If not, I do want to ask about, I can hear about the use of wiki in different situations. What do you think about, is that more popular in public sector or private sectors, or who is leading who? And do you think that they actually has a place, rather than, okay, we know that there's like organization using enterprise social media, something similar but not exactly the same. So is that like too many platforms, or how we pick the right one to do the right thing? So I know that there's a lot of questions. So I guess going back to my first one, public sector, private sector. So is there much differences on using wiki?
I guess I'll have a go at that. During my thesis, one of the surprises from the research, which wasn't surprising afterwards, but at the time I didn't expect to see it, was the broad use of wikis across the 6 companies that I looked at. So I'll just quickly throw that up on the screen. So I found 31 different uses for wikis in just 6 companies. And so these were large companies, small companies, one public, the rest were private, and they were an amazing range. And quite a few of the people who were involved had used multiple of these, if that makes sense. So quite a few people, almost all of them, were using it for project management, for example. And I found later on, after I saw that in the data, I found another piece of work looking at wikis in project management. I also found, I came across this piece of work by Penny Edwards in the UK. She researched wikis the year before I started my thesis, and she found that project management was a very big part as well. And I really like this piece here near the end of her research that talked about the ways the different uses of wikis combine to create an additive or almost a multiplication effect of value across the organization. And so she found that there was these chains of value that were co-supporting one another across the organizations that she looked at. Her research was slightly different. She looked at many, many more companies, but she only spoke to one person in each company, whereas I talked to whole teams in the 6 companies I talked to. So if anyone wants a copy of those, I'm happy to share them. But it really showed me that unlike a lot of the ERP and CRM systems and CMS systems, which have quite particular uses, the flexibility of the wiki meant that people were able to be quite creative about how they solved local problems. But because it was visible, they could then expand that to solve company-wide problems. And sometimes that went full wide. Other times, the use of the wiki became a prototype that was later turned into a specific application. And that was okay too. That wasn't seen as a bad thing. The later application was enabled by the learning they did in the way the work was done and the way that people interacted on the wiki in the first place.
So that's a really good list there, Stu. And I was just looking through that. Even though we're a government agency, I reckon we probably use about a good quarter of that for ours.
Okay. Catherine has a question, which is like, I'll let you ask that actually.
Okay. Look, I'm quite new to wikis. My experience is when I was in Nairobi, World Vision was actually started, and someone from Australia was actually setting up a wiki within, I think it was the WASH, the Water Sanitation Hygiene Area, for their organisation. I wasn't with them, but it ended up being a failure, and people didn't actually. So in my mind, it's sort of like different page for different, like a different technology, and so people in different teams are supposed to be adding their ideas, so a way to collate knowledge into one place. But from that experience, I really thought wikis didn't really have much of a success factor. So that's why I've come along to this webinar, because I thought, oh, perhaps, I've got this idea from that one experience. And now you're all saying, oh, there's one, it's using. So can you just go back and just explain to me, when you talk about a wiki, what actually is it? Because I can't understand how that fits with project management. And does everyone can just change things and delete things? And yeah, so if you can just step back and say, yeah, you all seem to be advocating wikis, but yeah, the strengths, the weaknesses, and what actually are they?
Dave, do you want to talk to that?
Oh yeah, so to me, a wiki is an online environment where you can have multiple and distributed authorship and editorship of content that's hyperlinked. But in sort of raising those couple of things, Catherine, most of the wikis you can actually manage access control onto the site. So you can't get, if you don't want something deleted or seen or used, you can actually control that access for it. It was interesting your comment about project management, and I picked up that Stu had that on the list. And I would say that a wiki is probably not a good tool for project management. It can do some things, and I'll tell you what we use it for. What we do is I get all my project managers to write a project on a page, which is like a one-page summary about what their project's about, and also to what's actually happening with their project, and we put that on the wiki. So as far as like managing schedule, costs, and budgets and risks and all that sorts of stuff, we use more traditional tools for that. But at a place where we can go, right, and what we do is we provide that generic information all about the project on a wiki page, and each project has its own page, so that one, it's a source of information for anyone who wants to find out about a project, and also they can self-serve information about that project across the agency, and it also means that the project staff can edit it really, really quickly.
Yeah, totally agree, and that speed is really important. But I guess the key thing for me, Catherine, is I'll tell you what wikis aren't. They're not magic. You don't just stand them up and, if you build it, they will come. That is an absolute lie when it comes to wikis. They need to be managed. You need to have clear expectations about people's involvement. And a couple that we looked at and that I've tried where it wasn't part of the workflow also failed. So for me, making it part of the workflow is really critical. With projects, we put tons more than that in, but we also use proper project management tools, Microsoft Project or whatever. We didn't use it for like Gantt charting or any of that sort of stuff, no budgeting stuff. But where there's a budget, all the background info behind the budget was in the wiki. It was the place to go to find out why that was that way. So the final budget was sitting in SAP, but the building of the budget and all the discussions about it and everything else was all marked up in the wiki. So you could go and find out what was going on. also the operations of the projects and the rollouts, we just almost treated it like a diary, and we would put stuff in. We'd have these hierarchies of the project and the different phases and the different parts and technologies, and everything would be documented in there. I remember one time we built a SAN to go into the Chicago data center, which was an old nuclear missile bunker, 45 minutes out of Chicago. Took 2 hours to get through security into the bottom of it. And you weren't allowed to have your mobile with you when you went down there. We built this SAN, and 2 years later we had a failure, and the actual controller card had failed. And Dell said, we can't do anything for you until you give us the serial number of the card. So we had to drive somebody out of Chicago to the bunker, 2 hours through security, get the serial number, come back out, let Dell know, then Dell had to find the part, get it out to the bunker, 2 hours through security, replace the card. I dived into the wiki from Melbourne, went back 2 years, and there was the photos we'd taken of the server before we bundled it up and sent it to the US. And we zoomed in, and there was the serial number on the controller card. We sent it straight to Dell. They went out, and within 3 hours, we had the international email server back up and running. So those sorts of things, a wiki will save you that one time, and that's just paid for 10 years worth of your wiki use, right? And so it's that background information, but the value of it came from the discipline of the team using it, not the wiki itself. The wiki is not magic. It's just the place where the team helps each other and stores its history. Arthur?
Yeah, Catherine, you were sort of doing a contorted face there that looked like a, I do want to answer as well.
How does that differ from just having a file structure? You know, that you actually save your photos on a file structure, you know, for that project, and you go back through the files. And it fits in, I think, with what Christoph was mentioning, like, is a file structure a wiki? I mean, like, so or is it, and it sounds like an internet type.
We have a 63 terabyte set of network drives at CFA, completely unsearchable, no context, no structure, stuff everywhere because no one knows where to put stuff. They're just drives. Everyone making their own folders. No one can find anybody else's folder. There's no collaboration happening in the network drive, right? The beauty of having it in the wiki is you can find anything in seconds. And when you find it, you can navigate. It makes sense. And that discipline around how you build the structure and the hierarchy is really important. That's part of the gardening. That's part of the management of it. Like, that's not magic. It doesn't happen automatically.
Yeah, I want to add something. I totally agree with Stuart because I actually did a project to try to make things, because network drive is linear and is structured, and information largely is not. So you can't really put unstructured information into a structured kind of system. So that's the difficulty. And I guess the other thing is wiki is somebody like is using Excel. Excel is for everything. They use Excel for calculation. They use Excel for project management. They use Excel for storage. So it's people treat Excel as the universal software. It's a silver bullet, but that's not the case. I guess I agree with Stuart that it's how you use, how you define you want to use wiki rather than what wiki really is. As long as you agree a way to use it, if it's used like a content storage, history, everything, then you do it that way. But discipline is really important. Otherwise, it's just like roll out and it's uncontrollable.
Yeah, I'll add to that, and then maybe show you a couple of images of examples which will perhaps cover some of Catherine's challenges as well. If you don't have the right culture, wikis don't work. Full stop. Jimmy Wales, who created Wikipedia, was talking at a actually it was an APQC conference in the US in Houston, like I don't know, decade ago, or maybe even longer now. And it was interesting. I was chatting with him afterwards, and we talked about the power of wikis and, you know, why a wiki. He told a story actually at the conference as to, you know, he was unemployed sitting on his couch in his pajamas when he thought of the idea of, you know, imagine if there was the thing that everyone could have all of the knowledge in the world and it was free, you know, and that's kind of how it started. But he also, when we were talking one-on-one, he told the story about how frustrated he got because, you know, there's theory red and theory blue, or theory black and theory white, or whatever sort of, you know, metaphor you want to use. He would say, well, you know, theory red, you can have your page, and theory blue, you can have your page. But what do? They document their version of the world and then spend most of their time trying to sabotage the other one. You know, you say, no, we're right. So we're not happy enough just to write about what we know. We have to go and get rid of that other one because they're wrong, because they disagree with us, you know, and that's a mindset, you know, I'm right, therefore you're wrong because you have a different idea. Wikis work when you're in that mind flex that I mentioned before, to say, well, this is how I think it works. And Stu has a different way. So he writes his own page about how that works. And then Dick writes his page about how that works. And the real value then is that you're capturing all of this diversity of idea, and then you're socializing the differences. And in a really good wiki, you can then start to engage in dialogue around that. Like the old Google sites were excellent because you could have your page, and then there was a separate field, and you could have a whole conversation with people interacting about that page. When they created the new Google sites about 3, maybe 4 years ago, I can't remember now, a lot of that functionality was lost, including Stuart was talking about, you know, most wikis have, you know, pretty good access control. The old wikis had, you could control who had access to which page. Now, they've either got access as an editor or a viewer, and if you give it to them, they've got all of the pages. The only thing you can do is hide some of the pages, but anyone with edit rights can see all of the pages anyway. It's just not in the navigation. Let me show you an example of that. So going back to your point, Catherine, it's an extremely powerful place that people can share ideas from multiple points of view. They can engage and argue about, you know, differences. And if you've got the right culture, you can really create an amazing knowledge base to go and look up later, like what Stu said, or to continue to build that over time. So I'll just quickly share my screen and show you a couple of examples. There's your post, Stu. The problem is it's now hiding my page. Make that go away. Hang on, just bear with me for a minute. My navigation is beyond my screen sharing thing there, so I'm losing the side of it. Let's have a quick look at the ACE. So this is in edit mode. I'll move that into non-edit mode so you can actually see what an end user sees. Basically, actually, what I should have done was shown you that. I'll go back to edit mode, Catherine, to answer your question. Basically, a wiki is a combination of pages. All of these pages, and you can create as many pages as you like, and you can then link them to each other and set them in a hierarchy so that you can have a structure. So under organization, we've got what's the schedule. This is for the ACE program, the Accelerated Collaboration Experience. So then we've got who are the experts involved, you know, announcements, we're capturing the announcements. Because if you just make an announcement in Telegram, our key collaboration tools in this program, we're using Zoom, Telegram to socialize ideas and just bounce around and do all of that conversational, transactional stuff. Then we've got the wiki, which is a Google site, as the knowledge base. And then we use Miro to construct, so the collaboration board in background, to construct things. And then once we've constructed them, we bring them in to a more permanent record and less transactional record in the wiki. So we're using different tools for different aspects of the collaborative experience. So going back to and it's all just in pages. So I'll go back to the publish side again. So so this is an example. We've got the whole program, which explains the program. You can embed videos. We've made videos about how to navigate the site, what's collaboration about, why we're here, things like, how we're going to work together. So that's that building that culture. What are the expectations? What kind of behavior should we eliminate? Principles of collaboration. So there's a whole range of, if you want to be here and you want to participate in this and you want to collaborate, this is the kind of thing you can do. You don't want to re-explain that to every new joiner. So you capture that and you put it there. Stuff about your site. As we go through, we do different stages with different activities. They would do these activities not in the wiki itself. They would go out and do the activities in Miro, or they would have an engagement session and conversation in Telegram. So basically chat channels, and then we build that back up. And when we then come together and do a weekly Zoom conversation. There's various teams working on different aspects. But then when someone picks up something, anyone in the whole program picks up on something, they can come out and grab it as an insight. They can say, oh, that was really interesting. And they can bring it in and share it. So this tells them how to record an insight, oh, that was magic. I want to make sure that we don't forget that. So, and this is just another page. So there was, things that come out of conversations. We bring these insights in here and then share them. So that's the MindFlex thing, talking about that. But then my favorite cartoon of all time, I think I've used it in just about every program I've ever run. We come through and we capture these insights, and there's a template at the bottom. So someone can just come in and click on this and then record another insight, copy the template, overwrite it, keep it there, and then everyone gets to share that. So the idea here with this kind of culture is if you've got the cultural elements right, you can actually create some really magic material. And in learning, oh, by the way, the Canvas learning management system is built entirely on a wiki. Wikipedia is clearly a wiki as well. So, that's an entire, and a lot of the big universities around the world now use Canvas, all built in a wiki engine. It's really quite remarkable. So that's that one. Another one that I'll show you that's no longer active because I'm not running this program anymore. But we ran, and this originally came from a knowledge management program that I ran and then converted into management consulting. Basically, there's a homepage that lists all of the students. This was developed before Canvas arrived. So we were using wikis to do learning systems. And then somebody thought that was a great idea. So off they went, probably independently of us. We didn't make that happen. But basically, every student in the program has a profile page. And actually, this guy's one of the clients for the ACE program now, but I originally met him through a previous program. Wikis connect people in more ways than just through the content. And then they've got a page where they create content around a topic. So this is Adam's version of his first assignment, where he writes 2,000 words about insights and why they're important for consulting. And you can see you can build this page up with all sorts of, you can just insert text, figures, pictures, videos, and bring it all together. Now you say, well, okay, so what's so fantastic about that? Students write assignments all the time. Well, the fantastic thing about that is all of these students can read each other's assignment. So instead of, 35 students all doing one assignment and the only person who ever reads it is the teacher, here we've got, I think there were 25 in this program, 25 students, each doing a different topic, each being assessed on that topic, and then all 25 of them can read all of the great research that was being done so that you amplify this learning. And not only that, they are expected to link their topic to the other students' topics through hyperlinks. So if you come through here, you'll find here, so Adam's listed behavior. So then he's made a link to the behavior page, which another student would have written about. Well, the behavior page is an example page. They also get example pages of what a credit looks like, what a HD looks like. So we're sharing a standard of what things would look like. So
can I just also make a point there about that, particularly on the education side, that where I think the wikis are really strong is that it's the collaborative authoring as well. So you can have a student team of 3 or 4 people. They can be in the one document and actually editing in real time.
Yeah, absolutely. And they do that in this program as well. Thanks for picking that up, David. I don't know whether you saw when I was navigating around, but there were group pages and the groups actually share their stuff, and they are literally in the same page at the same time. The early versions of Google Docs and Google Sites, only one could edit one page at one time. But you know, if there's, that's why every student's got their own page, they've got their own profile page, they've got their own assignment page, but the group pages were shared and they just had to manage the way that they saved them. But typically what happened is they'd all get together on Skype or Zoom or whatever. They'd be talking with each other, talking in a chat channel, and actually all looking at the screen at the same time. And one of them would be like scribing on that page, capturing it, while the others, oh no, don't write that down, Stu. What we really mean is this, you know. So it really is magic. Great pickup.
Yeah, well, I've actually had them editing, you know, co-editing in the one document at the same time. There's a couple of products you can do that with, and that's in fact that's how we wrote our agency's ICT strategy. Is that were 2 or 3 of us in the one document drafting it as we went, and it leads to a lot of interesting discussion and can get quite heated, but it's a really interesting way to work like that, where you're actually editing one another's content as you're going.
Yeah. I want to respond to what Christoph said. He's made a couple of points about, you know, yes, of course, and you can do this in SharePoint and 365 and other products like that as well. And he's right. The reason why I use Google Sites is they're free for everyone. You need no licensing, no login. Well, you need a login, right? You need a free Google-related ID. So in an open learning environment, you know, I'm using open free tools. And of course, there's similar functionalities. Christoph, would you like to add to that?
No, you're spot on, Arthur. I was just about to say that I completely agree with your point. Making the distinction between paid platforms and free platforms is an important one. I just felt that, you know, again, if we're saying wiki as a corporate behavior, we just need to, again, we're not being technology agnostic. So we're actually saying wiki is the only technology can do this, which it's not. And so that's good. Coming back to my original question, I think what we're really trying to promote is collaborative knowledge sharing through technology. So in answer to Catherine's question, what is our definition of wiki? We're talking about co-authoring. We're talking about collaborative document writing, sharing of multimedia formats. So for instance, you can record your Teams meeting, whack it up on a web page, and then share it for everyone to see if they weren't able to attend the meeting. Or what the popular thing at the moment is, everyone's got a podcast. So if you've got a microphone and half an hour to spare, you can share your knowledge in a verbal format, chuck it on a web page and say, hey guys, this is me banging on for half an hour on a subject. Listen away while you're riding your bike or driving to work. So podcasting is a really popular form of doing a wiki. Of course, none of that. And one thing I particularly love, if you take podcasts and meetings, is the transcribing function. Now, I don't know if there are free versions of it, but certainly within Microsoft Teams, and there are other paid versions, the ability to transcribe meetings live is absolutely fantastic for note taking. You're able to take people out of the verbal space and actually capture what's being said and actually use that as your collateral for whatever you're using, like whether you want to quote a senior executive and say, well, this person said this in a live format, you can just grab it. There's just so much tools available. I just want to make sure that when we say wiki, we're not getting trapped in a technological way of thinking, that we're talking about the collaborative use of technology.
Absolutely. For me, it is entirely about ways in which to enable collaboration. And if you're in an environment and it's a closed environment and they're paid for the tools, even then, the tools are only as good as the way that people engage. But the tools can then really accelerate what else that you can do. And it wouldn't matter whether it was, sort of Zoom or Teams or Microsoft or Telegram or whatever. I used a whole range of different wikis early on. There were a lot of wiki engines sort of popping up, and some of them came and went. And I ended up settling on Google because just about everyone has some form of access to Google. They're familiar with it. It's highly intuitive to use. You didn't really have to train people on it, but also, and it was free. But the other big one for me was that you could go across many different organizations using it. When you're running a program like ACE or, the consulting program that we ran through a university, it was kind of outside the SOE of the university. We needed people from a range of different people, countries, time zones, and cultures, all to be sort of in the one place at the one time. And Google was one of the few free platforms that actually did that pretty well. So it's really horses for courses. I'm not for any one technology over the other. Use the one that works for your context.
Yeah.
I am. I hate to say it, Christoph, but I've been around a lot of Microsoft sites. I have never to this day seen one that operates as well as I've seen on wikis, except in the IT department.
Exactly.
Right. And so for me, it's about practice. Are they going to collaborate with one another? And I see these little islands of excellence in Microsoft world as different people have gotten off the different features. We've got Teams, huge Teams use as a chat tool in CFA. Hardly anyone's using the actual Teams function in Teams.
Yeah.
Which is, and it's all there. It's all available. Microsoft will do it all.
Yeah.
People just don't do it. But
yeah,
Catherine, that piece of collaborative development, that is a key piece of wiki success if you're gonna use these technologies. And I'm guessing this is all technologies because I've seen the same thing happen in collaborative Word and Google documents. We had two lumps to get over, getting people in a team willing to type over somebody else's content and change it. Really big taboo type cultural pushback, and took a real trust building effort to get people to be able to feel free to say, no, it's actually not that, it's this. And we started off using comments as the way to get around that. Don't change what somebody else wrote. Write a comment asking them if that's right or should it be this. And in every case we did that, after 3 or 4 months, the comments stopped. They just edited it. But then we hit the second bump. And that bump was the international bump. So the UK team wouldn't overwrite the US team's content or the Australian team's content or the South African team's content. And that took another concerted effort to get the collaboration happening globally. And that wasn't easy. That took a lot longer because of the different, especially the US. The US are a bit precious. Not the US country, just our employees in the US were a little bit precious about their content. And so in working that out, you discover that some of the things you changed incorrectly because you didn't understand the local context. And the learning that occurs as people start to realize that what they're really communicating isn't the content, it's the what ifs, what else that caters for the local context. And that awareness of the international context was such a great breakthrough for our organization back when I was at Daniels. And I got a phone call last year, early, might have been 2020, 2 years ago, from my old IT manager at Daniels, who had just left Daniels after all those years. And he said that he had a brand new IT guy start in Chicago. And I spent exactly 1 day in the Chicago office in my time. And after 1 week in the organization, he called Lucky and said, this is the most collaborative workplace culture I've ever worked in internationally. I've never been anywhere where I can find an answer to a question so quickly, even when the person has left the organization. And Lucky called me and said, I just wanted to let you know, it's been 11 years since you set this up, and it's still going so strong that an employee after 1 week sees the power of it. So if you can get it right, and you've got to work it, you've got to pull all those different technologies, you've got to make it really stream, what's that word? It has to really flow. Any barriers become excuses to not do it. So it's really about removing those barriers. But if you can do that, you can really make it a long-term difference, because you're not changing the tools, you're changing the collaboration culture of the organization. And guys, would you mind if I quickly showed you some of those tools that I used to do that?
Sure.
Right.
Go ahead.
So this is the best thing I can share with you tonight. Atlassian hired a guy called Stuart Mader. Stuart left Atlassian in 2009, and when he did, he wrote a book called Wiki Patterns. And if you can get a hold of this book, it's absolutely brilliant, but you don't need it, because after about 2016, he actually loaded the whole book up onto this website. So I'm going to put this in the chat now. This website has all of the patterns and anti-patterns that we use. So you can see here, there's a whole bunch of patterns and anti-patterns here. So there's ambassador, there's 99.1, barn raising. We did quite a few barn raising where we'd start a new part of the wiki. So we'd have a barn raising event. I'll just click on that one. We'll go and check it out. If it's going to open. Here we go. So this is where you can see it's got how you use it, an example, related patterns, and then stuff in different languages and everything, which is great. So the idea here is that you get everyone to come together on the same day. I used to provide lunch for them to get them to come along. We'd all have pizzas, and it was actually just one morning, we'd just spend 4 hours on it, and we would go hell for leather building this one section. And the focus was, by the end of the session, the structure had to be in place. There could be broken links and half pages written and everything, no problem. But the structure, the skeleton was up, and the cross links to the rest of the wiki was up. So it was situated within the wiki, and they would go to other parts of the wiki and refer to the new site and cross link it all together, because we were moving to an asynchronous world. And this is the big comment I wanted to say tonight. We've moved from a time when we all had time to sit down and read the newsletters and read the local paper and absorb huge amounts, huge percentages of the information around us. And that is no longer the case. We've gone from information scarcity to information overload, to ridiculous amounts of information. And so the coping mechanism at a corporate level for that is to go asynchronous. And podcasts are a great example of that. I'm not going to call Arthur and tell him how to do that thing. I'm going to record a podcast, and then Arthur can access that whenever he wants. And then 2 years later, David comes across the same problem, does a search, finds a podcast, and gets the answer. And I'm not even working there anymore. That asynchronicity is where Wiki's sweet spot really is, where you, project updates, for example, we moved all onto the wiki. And so we did a barn raising of all the existing projects. We put all the project updates on there, so the CEO could go and look at any project anytime and get the latest update. We no longer emailed him. We pulled that all off email. So no one got project updates by email anymore. But they could subscribe or watch the project and get an email whenever a new update was done for that project if they wanted the trigger. And there's a bit on this website about that as well. So some of these are patterns, some of these are anti-patterns. And so troll is an example of an anti-pattern where people will be negative and try and tear down other people's work or undo other people's work. And it includes how to fix it. How do you find when it's happening? And what are some of the related patterns, like the GNOME pattern? And so we use the GNOME pattern to assign a person in each country to be a wiki gardener and keep an eye out for the trolls and keep things up to date and keep the engagement going. So they would monitor the analytics and that sort of stuff. Can't recommend this site enough. Really, really good. The book is great. I think there's a few more in the book. I'm not sure he put the whole lot up, but the main ones are here, and it's certainly enough to get going. And with Daniels, the key thing for us was that it became the place to go to find out stuff. And once we got to that level, we were set. And I knew we were at that level when I was in a board meeting one day, and the chairman of the board asked the CEO a question. And the CEO got about a sentence and a half into his answer and said, "Oh, wait, I'll actually tell you." And he opened the wiki, found the page, and read the stats to the chairman from the page, the actual data, an executive using evidence for a decision live. And I knew we'd made it. It was great.
That's
especially when
very
it's the CEO doing it, communicating with the chairman around that decision.
Yeah.
I think that's one way to see it's like a wiki can be like a dashboard to the top management. So it's gathered information for you, showing that like real-time or near real-time information. So I think that's better than you just keep receiving email. That's not effective way to deliver information right now. So the way is, okay, as long as I know there's a page that collate all the information for me, I just go there. It's a dashboard, it's a wiki page, and there's link that's the other thing, which is the power of wiki, which is how you can link different information to pages. So everything is interlinked. So that's the power of wiki behind the user authority, whether you can read, write, or something. So that's really, really powerful.
It's a good point, Dick. We had to tell people not to put stuff in the wiki. There was stuff that should have been in SAP or should have been in, Excel or Project Manager. We're like, no, that's not the place for this. So you do need a clear idea of what you're using the wiki for. But the wiki for us was that extra documentation, but the stuff that helps you make sense. And what we used to say all the time is, whenever you write something in the wiki, write it in a way that will help a person that starts a year after you've left the organization, right? That's what you put on the page. If that person came to you today, what would you tell them to make sense of this project or this area? That's what you put in the wiki. It's a sense-making tool. It's not a dumping ground.
I think it's a good point, Stu. One of the pages, one of the most useful pages we have on our wiki is titled "How We Work Around Here." So, and it's for our new starters within IT division, and it just gets, and one of the things that you've got to do is, if you're the new starter and you read through it and it's got a whole lot of descriptive things about how things are, where they work, where to find stuff in there, and it's really about how do you actually navigate around the organization and find stuff and how the place works. And one of the challenges, if you're in there doing that and you find something's not right, then you actually update it, and that for the new starters when they actually go around and ask questions. But a couple of things just to touch on what Stu's saying. I think, and I'll put my information manager's hat on, is that there's a bit of a balance about, I think, what you put in the wiki and what you actually, and where we find that the wiki is useful is to just to point to other documents like spreadsheets or, you know, particular plans or documents, because a wiki is not a records management system. And where you've got business records, they should be in your, you know, your trim or your, you know, your other corporate registers for information. And the wiki is a really good place to organize and point to it. The other thing I want to point to is, you know, we were talking about editing and how people are reticent to edit over the stuff. My view is that, you know, wikis are really built from the bottom up, and, you know, they don't have to be perfect. And in fact, they're better off being pretty much in draft status for a lot of the time. And because if you try and make it too pretty, then people are reticent to actually edit it.
Okay, I'm aware of the time, so it's almost 7:30. Normally, what we will do is we'll keep going, like a lot informal discussion, but this is somehow already like a informal conversation. So what do you want to do with the next like 15 or even the next 30 minutes? Do you want to keep going, or do you want to change to another format?
Dick, I think we're probably in the next 3 minutes should have wrap it up. And then stop the recording, and then we can just keep the call open if anyone wants to continue the conversation for the next half hour.
Okay.
Just before we do that, I'll add one comment answering Christoph, which relates back to other tools, about the searchability. Christoph had made a couple of comments about that, and very, very valid. I remember a guy, a young man that I was mentoring a little bit, a KMO, joined a knowledge manager to a company in Australia, and he was calling me up and saying, "Oh, we're now starting these big new KM programs, and you know this would be fantastic." And you know, I was just going to get some advice, and I said, "Your company has already done a huge amount of KM, and you, if you go into your SharePoint system, and it was SharePoint that time, if you go into your SharePoint system and search for these people's names, I'm sure you'll find a whole bunch of documents and links to documents," going back to what David and Stuart were saying. And he, you know, 5 years earlier, they'd made the whole KM team redundant, but all of that stuff was still there, right? So he was trying to reinvent all of the wheels in the same company 5 years later, totally ignorant of everything that had gone on. He then did the search, and, you know, I got this really excited message the next day about, "Oh my God, you wouldn't believe what we found," you know. And it was just that I happened to know the people who'd done the work. I didn't do the work, they did the work. And he found all of this stuff, and then they went on to do some really good stuff in KM again. But they just had this 5-year lapse. But it was so good to see that happen. But that was SharePoint, Stuart, Christoph. You know, the tool is just the enabler. You still have to have the culture for it. Anyway, I'll shut up, Nick, and we can wrap this formal session up and then continue.
Yes. So David and Stuart, do you want to like have any like summary or conclusion somewhat before we like round up the session?
I guess the point I probably want to make is that you know, we find wikis are really good as just roadmaps to other stuff, as well as collaborative tools. And as I said, a bottom-up approach to it. And, you know, wiki stands for doing stuff really quick. And that's where we get the value out of it.
That's a good point, Dave. The word wiki is actually a Hawaiian word, wiki, which is used for the little quick taxis that you get from Honolulu Airport into Waikiki. And so Dave Cunningham, the guy that invented wikis, he was living in Hawaii at the time, and he called them after those little taxis. And I guess the thing I wanted to finish with, which is probably the most important thing you can say about a corporate wiki, and that is, it isn't Wikipedia. Forget everything you know about Wikipedia when you're setting up a corporate wiki. It's you'll have way more than 1% editors. You can't rely on hundreds of thousands of people out there putting content in. You've got to proactively manage it. And if anyone's interested, I have a paper that was written by Stuart Matter back in 2009 when he left Atlassian, talking about your wiki isn't Wikipedia, how to use it for technical communication. It's quite a nice little, just one pager that that covers off some of the key mistakes that people make when they start a wiki. So that's the key thing to keep in mind from my point of view and for the recording.
Okay, thank you very much for everybody. Thank you, Arthur, David, and Stuart, share your experience and insights on Wiki. And also thanks everybody that who ask questions, post your question to the chat box. And yes, thank you very much for everybody. And what I'll do is I'll stop the recording first, and then we can keep the conversation going.